You know, if I had to describe the Lumia 640 in one word, it's potential. Well, maybe potential is too nice of a word. Holy crap, it's cold. So I've been using the Lumia 640 for about 3-4 months now, and I think I have a pretty good idea for who this smartphone is aimed at. Now keep in mind, this is a $60 smartphone, so don't expect it to be some flagship killer, but you'd be surprised how well it actually gets the job done for daily tasks. Now this is not going to be for the average power user, but for the average user, yes. Composing emails, sending quick text messages, surfing the web. If you're that businessman who needs to get stuff done but just isn't interested in the BlackBerry ecosystem, then I think I just found your next best thing. Although if you do pick up this phone, I highly recommend you get a case on it because the plastic backing on this sucker is slick. This phone is so slippery, I don't think I can't recall a time I didn't stick it in my pocket, sat down, and then watch it slide out of my pocket. I can say Microsoft did a pretty good job of making this thing drop resistant. Now let's move on to my favorite thing about this phone, the 8 megapixel camera on the back. Now on paper, I went with this phone because it was so similar to my iPhone 5s's camera. Colors seem to be fairly accurate, although the camera does favor taking cooler pictures most of the time, so depending on your preference, it may vary. Bright lights just love to be blown out of exposure, and the autofocus is just not fast, like, at all. I found quicker shots tend to focus on wrong places, or it just didn't focus at all. Maybe this camera just has a harder time taking pictures in a darker setting because the only time I really noticed this was taking pictures at night. Switching over to manual mode and setting your white balance, focus, ISO, and aperture seems to yield a much better result when it comes to pictures. You can record at 720p 24 frames per second all the way up to 1080p at 30 frames per second, as well as manually set your white balance, your focus, and your brightness. Although the audio quality is recorded in mono sound, that doesn't make it bad. The microphone does a fairly good job of identifying my voice when placing a phone call, but because of the placement of the microphone and the speaker, you have to make sure you're holding the phone in the right position in order to get clear phone calls. Now, I want to talk about some of the caveats with this phone. Primarily, the lack of apps. For every major app that isn't available on the Windows Store, there does seem to be an equivalent for it via a third-party source. For example, there's no YouTube app, but there is MetroTube, and there's no SoundCloud, but there's AudioCloud. Now, I'm not saying any of these apps are bad, but I'll let you decide whether or not if you want to use them. In fact, diversity is one of the things that Windows Phone loves to advertise. From resizing your tiles to changing your color theme, you can make your Windows Phone stand out from the rest. Although the customization settings don't go nearly as deep as something like Android can do. But there are certain features on a Windows Phone that you can only get on a Windows Phone, like Cortana for example. Just like Google Now and Siri, the more that you use Cortana, the better she'll understand you and the better she'll be able to help you out when you ask her something. Hey Cortana, what's the weather like?
It's currently 26 and mostly cloudy.
So, in conclusion, what can I say about the Lumia 640? If you're in a pinch and you need a phone that can get you online, send emails, and do text messages with a few apps on the side, this is the perfect phone for you. Plus, when it comes to battery life, this guy barely uses any power. From my experience, I haven't had to recharge the phone for about a day or a day and a half. Although if you're looking to switch over to a Windows Phone, I'd probably recommend you to something like the 950 or the 950 XL. Both of those phones are far more powerful than this guy, but something tells me that Microsoft's got plans for us in the near future.